Dan Berry, welcome to the Other 51. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Brian, very much.
First of all, since this is kind of a writing podcast inspired by Hamilton, I was just wondering, do you have any kind of experience with the show? Have you seen it? Are you a fan of it? Do you have any kind of knowledge of it?
Well, certainly I have knowledge of it. I haven't seen it. I'm not that wealthy, and I know some of it because my two daughters rock out to it. So they listen to the songs on Spotify or whatever.
Oh, gotcha. So you have kind of limited experience actually listening to the show or to the show itself?
Yes.
Okay. Wanted to talk with you today. First of all, we do of course have something in common. We both are St. Bonaventure graduates. And I mean, this is very true, and our podcast listeners are about to find out that you get two Bonaventure people together for any amount of time, and you have to talk Bonaventure. It's just kind of, I think it's in the diploma somewhere that's the case.
That's right.
Um,
Exactly right.
so what about Bonaventure as a school, as a program? What made that have such an impact on you personally and professionally?
I went to St. Bonaventure. One, I had to stay in New York State because I needed the tuition assistance program that was available to poor knuckleheads like me back in the day. And so I looked at the various schools that had some kind of journalism program, and Bonaventure had journalism in its very title. It's since changed that, but back then it was called the journalism department, and I was drawn to that because I knew it meant writing. And so, after many years of reflection, I think that St. Bonaventure imbued me with a Franciscan sensibility that is secular as much as it is spiritual. That being that, when I write, I try to meet people where they are. I try to understand the dignity in every human life and to recognize that we all have a story and those stories matter. And I think that that attitude or that approach to my journalism or my writing comes in part, at least in great part, to my Franciscan schooling at Bonaventure.
When's the last time you were back on campus?
Actually, I was there in late September. The freshman students were either blessed or cursed with having to read my latest book. It's called The Boys in the Bunkhouse, and it was the freshman year experience or first year experience book that they all read and had to reflect on. And so I went in late September and gave an address to all the freshmen and went around to various classes and talked.
Oh, and do you still see? It's been a long time. I've been back. I haven't been back. It's weird because I live in Rochester. You'd think I'd be able to get back often, but I don't. It's been a few years since I've been back, especially when students are in session. Do you still see and get that same kind of sense that vibe that you had when you were a student, or that vibe that you carry with you? Is that still there, do you think?
As an aged alumnus, I suppose I have kind of a romantic view of the Bonaventure spirit and all that kind of stuff, which I think any of your listeners would have, dependent upon what college they went to. But I do think that there's a great pride in this very, very small university tucked into the mountains of the Southern Tier. It's in the Atlantic 10 basketball conference, and I think it's one of the smallest in enrollment that is still playing Division I basketball. And so there's this sense of, we're the underdog. We're still going to go after you. And I think that the students there today still have that spirit. There's a great pride in the school, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've always tried to figure out too where that sense of pride comes from, because I've been at a number of schools. I teach at Oswego. I went to grad school at Syracuse, and my wife has worked in higher ed. And so you always see schools with a lot of pride, and I've always tried to figure out what is it about Bonaventure that makes it like amps it up like to a factor of 10. And I guess I always just kind of come back to, and I love your thoughts on this, I always come back to the location, like the fact that it's very much tucked away south of Buffalo in a very small town. and it's not easy. Like there's no city to bleed into on the weekend, or to go home for the weekend, even if you're from Buffalo or Rochester, is still kind of an investment. So you're kind of stuck there, and it becomes when you feel that way, you're stuck there as a freshman. But by the time you get to be an upperclassman, it kind of feels like a real we're all in this together esprit de corps.
I think that's. I was about to say that. The school has a feeling of being hermetically sealed because it's in such a rural location, and it's banked by the Enchanted Mountains. And I think you spend a lot more time developing relationships with other students than you would at a school that is connected to a city or is larger in enrollment. I will tell you this, that I literally just got back from a golfing vacation. By the way, the first I've ever taken, and I think I may give up golf as a result. But I went on a golfing vacation with three other men, and they all were on my dorm floor, Devereaux, in 1976. And so for 40 years, it struck me as I was leaving them that we've been friends for 40 years. All of us having met by the variations of dorm assignments. We just wound up together, and we all connected, and that connection has lasted to this day. And I attribute it to having gone to a very small university.
Yeah, I have a group of friends like that too. We met now just over 20 years ago, and we have a group vacation every summer that we go to either the Delaware Shore or up in the Adirondacks together. And
Sure.
our kids come with us, and my poor wife, who's one of two non-Bonaventure people on that trip. She's been made an honorary class of '99 member since then. And in fact, she has a shirt that she wears for the group picture every year, and it says "I married into this" with the big Bona logo.
That's great. So, two things. One, you're pointing out that I'm 20 years older than you, very deftly, and that hurt. And two, you might have your own wife as a guest and ask her about what she feels about St. Bonaventure. You might hear something different.
Oh, she would have a lot to say about the Bonaventure thing. Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you mentioned that that Franciscan sensibility that you think still influences your writing, and I think that's very obvious when you read your This Land columns for the Times. But throughout your career, before you kind of got to this point where you're writing the columns that you are, when you were a zoning board reporter or a town board reporter, I'm wondering how do you think, and maybe this is hindsight, but how do you think that sensibility influenced your kind of workaday reporting?
I think that even when I started out at a very small newspaper in north central Connecticut, kind of a mill town area of Connecticut, not Greenwich or Fairfield County, and I would be assigned to cover the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting on a Thursday night. I always looked to find the story in it. I always tried to figure out how to make the members of the board come alive, what they did during the meeting and how they spoke, and with context and with the scene, I tried to make a little short story out of even a Zoning Board of Appeals meeting story. Having worked in journalism, there's kind of a boilerplate way of writing those stories. The Zoning Board of Appeal met Tuesday night to vote on the buffer zone around the new Stop and Shop or something like that. I always tried to figure out a way to turn it into a short story as well as being informative about the facts.
Okay. And I think most people do know you from your current gig at the Times with the Your Land, This Land. Is it This Land or Your Land? I always turn it into a Woody Guthrie song.
That's okay. It's called This Land, but you're welcome to call it Your Land because it is. But yeah, no, it's This Land. So after the Woody Guthrie song, yeah.
So how was that title? Was that your idea?
Yeah, what happened was I was writing the About New York column for the Times, where I would write a couple of columns a week about the great city of New York. And while I was doing that, Hurricane Katrina crushed New Orleans and a good stretch of the Gulf Coast. And so I asked to go down there and write about it, even though it was beyond the boundaries of the 5 boroughs of New York. And so I filed a bunch of stories on there. And after that, the thought occurred to a couple of editors, well, why is there a way to do a column that is like about New York, which is kind of very personal and grounded in a place, but do it for the entire country? And so, I thought about that, and I said, all right, let's give it a shot. And then a few editors and I went to a bar and we said, well, what the hell are we going to call this damned thing? And it went through, all sorts of horrible names. And then, I was and am a Woody Guthrie fan and a Pete Seeger fan, and so it just came to me, This Land. That's how that happened.
And as a Bonaventure guy coming to the career decision in a bar, that seems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. Plus with an Irish surname, so we'll hit all the stereotypes.
One of the pieces I wanted to talk about was the one that ran. It was the Sunday before the election, and it was the Celia column on the Celia Vargas story that you wrote. A fabulous piece. I was just kind of walk me through that process. First of all, in general, but especially specifically, how do you find a story like this? Like, how do you find someone like Celia Vargas to even start telling her story?
Well, I guess the seed of this story and leading up to finding Celia Vargas was traveling around the country for the This Land column for the last several years. I stayed in an inordinate number of Hampton Inns.
Okay.
And Holiday Inn Expresses and country inns and suites. And I've always wanted to tell the story of one of these women. It's almost invariably a woman, okay, who is in the hall pushing that cart, cleaning my room or cleaning someone else's room. And she's, almost invisible to the guest. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Unless you need an extra towel or something. And that intrigued me and it bothered me. I wanted to tell what it's like to do that for a living. I mean, I don't think we give it a lot of thought, and it's an extremely hard job. And these women I knew from another story are expected to turn a room in 15 or 17 minutes. It's all timed. So then I knew that Trump had a hotel in Las Vegas, and then it was resisting a vote for its employees to unionize. They won the vote, and now the Trump management was fighting it, was resisting it, and it was going all the way up to the National Labor Relations Board. And so I combined those two thoughts, and I said, well, maybe this is a time to write about that woman. She is an immigrant, but she's also a citizen, and she's going to vote. What is that like? And so I just made a bunch of calls to people who represent immigrants new to the country, immigrant rights, and then I wound up calling the culinary union in Las Vegas, and they represent some 57,000 people in Nevada. They're the people who are the barbacks, the cocktail waitresses, the people in the kitchen, and the guest room attendants, the housekeepers. And I reached out to that union and I said, do you have some people I could talk to?
Mm-hmm.
And we went through several people, and I said, geez, what you just told me about Celia Vargas sounds really wonderful. Do you think she'd talk to me? And she agreed, and so that's what happened. A great photographer at the Times, Todd Heisler, and I flew out to Las Vegas and just spent some time with her. And, we were there in the morning when she had to get ready for work and wake up her grandkids and all that kind of stuff. And what I try to do is just slow it down so that you feel the person's life.
And how is that at all awkward? I always think when I talk to my students and teach them about reporting and moving beyond this idea of sitting down and interviewing a person with like your list of questions and just kind of getting to know them, having a conversation, watching them at work. And I know you've done this in past columns, but how do you how do you get used to, and how do you get them used to just kind of hanging around and watching them and having them go about what they normally do?
Right. Well, first of all, it's an awkward proposition, isn't it, for a stranger to contact you and say that he or she would like to talk to you and spend some time with you, and you agree, and then within 15 to 20 minutes, you're sharing some of the most intimate aspects of your life with this perfect stranger. It becomes very intimate very quickly, that relationship between a reporter and a subject. So I'm always aware of that. I'm also aware that reporters might be seen as Beelzebub, that we might be up to something. So I always explain what I'm up to, okay, what I'm interested in. I don't want any surprises. I'm not trying to get you indicted or anything like that. I just want to tell your story. And people will respond to this. It could be a little, difficult in the very beginning of the conversation or the time that we spend together. But I'm a kind of a self-deprecating guy, so there'll be jokes at my expense, or I'll notice things on the wall of the person's house or things they do that are, that resonate with me, and I'll say, well, I have that, you know who that artist is, or I have that same picture, or something like that, and then just use time as your friend, and I don't walk into a place and say, "Hello, Ms. Vargas. My name is Dan Barron with the New York Times. What year were you born? What country are you from?" I don't do that. I don't have that list of questions. I may have a few large thoughts written at the back of my notebook that I want to get to, but I don't. At this stage in my career, we've already established that I'm much, much older. I know what I need to know, and I also know that the last question I will ask will be, and what is your cell phone number? Because I want to always double check facts with you, and I may have a couple of other questions. So that's what happens. I let the moment breathe a little bit, and I just say, hey, well, go ahead. Just I'm going to hang out, and my colleague here, the photographer Todd Heisler, we're just going to hang out and watch you do what you got to do. Don't and that's how it goes. And that's what happened that morning. We watched her fix her liquid breakfast. She fixed kind of a protein shake. She woke up the kids. She got ready. She got dressed. And that was an important moment because she was putting on the black uniform, this kind of anonymous uniform that we all see. And then she puts on her name tag, and it has, Celia. That's who she is. And then off we went.
How long now, after you did the reporting, I'm curious about your writing process for a column like this. How quickly does it come together? How do you actually take all your reporting together and turn it into your column?
I drink a fifth of bourbon and I sit down. No, I don't do that. In this case, there was a real time pressure because the article or the column rather clearly needed to appear before the election, and it needed to appear a few days before the election. Okay, so I began writing after the afternoon of the morning that I met her. Actually, I had met her before, but I'd interviewed her at length the day before, but that morning we went to her house rather, and watched her go through all her assignments and chores and getting the kids out of the house and all that stuff, and then followed her to work, and then she disappeared into the huge Trump hotel, and then I grabbed a cup of coffee and went back to my hotel and began writing. And then in the morning, I flew back to New York from Las Vegas, and I wrote the entire time on the plane. And when I landed, I sent it to my editors. That's how that worked.
Okay. Do you find yourself to be a fast writer or a slow writer?
I would say that deadlines will clarify the mind. I find that if my deadline is tomorrow, I'll get it done. But if my deadline is uncertain or it's next week, I will drag it out and work and rework and rework the first few paragraphs to a nearly well, and then it'll be deadline again, and then I'll have to do it, and it clarifies the mind. So it depends on what the deadline is. I can be fast or I can be really slow.
And back to the piece, I assume it was a very deliberate choice that you never use Trump's name in it, correct?
Uh, yes,
Why,
yes, that's a fair statement.
would you mind saying why?
Um, I thought it would be more powerful. I thought that there might be it might come as much more of a surprise at the end, that the impact would be greater if at the end I described the gold-plated hotel and the fact that the owner is running for president. I just thought it was more effective storytelling, quite frankly. And maybe people will disagree. I wasn't trying to be cute or anything. I just thought it was better that way. And I also didn't use Hillary Clinton's name. It was about Celia Vargas and what her world is like, and I didn't want the names of presidential candidates kind of overshadowing it until the very end, when it's clear that it's Trump who owns this hotel, and then off we go.
I agree with you. It's I feel like if you have any of the other if Trump or Clinton's name in there, it feels like people's defenses would go up very quickly, and they didn't. And this, you're right, it kept very much focused on Celia, on her story, and on the story of her colleagues too. Um,
Right.
and the kicker, the ending, the kicker of the column, the where you describe where you first bring up that she works at Trump's hotel, and the last line, he will receive her labor but not her vote. I did see that kicker getting widespread praise on social media over the weekend. I mean, how did you come? Where did that come from? And when you see kind of wide praise like that over a line or the kicker of the column, and what's that like for you?
Uh, you know, let me answer the second part first. The wide praise, I don't trust it. It's nice to read, but I'm always bracing for the criticism.
Okay.
So you tend to forget the praise and remember the slights. And so it's very nice and reassuring that it resonated with people, but I don't think more of myself as a result. You know what I mean? I try to put all that stuff in context. It's really very nice, but not all that important, quite frankly. And the line came to me. Again, it's how you think clearly because you have to send the story. I knew I had to end it on a grace note of some kind. I couldn't just let the story peter out. I couldn't have her just walking into the building and leaving it at that. And so I knew that I wanted to bring it back to the presidential election. I wanted to bring it back to Celia Vargas, and all through the column, she keeps saying that she works, 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 which dispels this stereotype of immigrants as not hardworking. I mean, it's astounding that that stereotype even exists, but it's there. This woman lives to work because she needs to support her family. This is what she does. And so the plane was approaching the airport, and I knew that I had to send it as soon as I landed. And I knew that it had to be short. I knew that it had to be punchy. And so then it becomes almost like a calculation. It becomes like a calculus of language where you're trying to find a rhythm, and you're trying to use strong words, and you want it to be punchy and brief. And so, it was like numbers on a lock. They're spinning around,
Hmm.
and you're trying to find the right combination. And that's the one I settled on, in part because the plane was landing, but in part because I thought it sounded right, and it was also it had the added benefit of being true.
Just out of curiosity, do you look at that column any differently given the result of the election a few days later?
Uh, the fact that Trump won?
Yeah.
Um, no, because it was and is the truth.
Mhm.
I you know I it is what it is. And Celia Vargas, as you and I are talking now, you know what she's probably doing? She's probably on the 52nd floor cleaning her fourth room of the day, and she has 9 to clean. And so that continues, and it captured that moment. And she is, you know, she didn't vote for the guy. One. Two, the National Labor Relations Board has ordered him and his management team to come to the table for those union workers who have voted to unionize at his hotel. And so these things do not change, whether he's president or not. So it 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 happens to be what it was then and what it is now. And so the election doesn't really mean anything to it in the context of that piece.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about this piece, how you, in your writing, try to slow it down and kind of slow time down for the reader. How do you do that as a writer? What techniques do you use to be able to slow a story down?
Well, slowing it down, I more often use in terms of the time that I spend with the subject of a story or a column. I do not show up with a pad and a pen and go through a checklist of questions and then thank the person and leave. Okay. Truer things are revealed as you spend time with the person and you let the person talk and you allow the conversation to follow a natural rhythm rather than you saying, "Oh wait, don't talk about that yet. That's question 11 on my list. We're still at question 4." That's what I mean when I say slow it down. First with the person, okay, with the subject or with the moment, okay. I am a stickler for detail, and so my notebook will be filled with so many details. And then when I'm writing the story, I may only use about 3 or 4 of those details that I think are the most effective in the telling of the story. But by writing all those details down, I feel as though I own the moment.
Okay.
I feel like it's all in my notebook. So that's the first reference to slowing it down. Then, in trying to tell the story, you know, in that column, for example, I describe how she's making this vegetable protein mix, and she's waking up the kids, and she's doing all these very, very mundane things,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that another storyteller might have found to be unimportant. Do you know what I'm saying? So I find that stuff important because it allows me to give a sense of who this person is, and there are different ways in telling that story. You get a sense of who she is. You know, she's concerned about her health. She's trying to eat well. She's taking care of her grandchildren. She has all these things. So her personality and her being are being revealed by these small moments that someone else might say, well, we don't even need this. Why don't we just put her in the car and get it to the hotel?
Right.
I think slowing it down there, you get a sense of who this person is before she gets into the car, and you find yourself more invested in her.
Right. Or people, and maybe this is just stereotyping the new media world, but it would seem like people would speed up getting to her to get to the big political point that they're trying to make one way or the other, rather than making it about her and making it about like whatever political message you're trying to do as a writer. And I think what's effective about especially this piece is the way it's all about her, and you are very much a part of her world for the
Right.
reading it.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh
Go
no.
ahead.
What's the best thing you've read lately?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you what I'm reading now. I'm reading Dead Wake
Yes.
by Eric Larson. It's the book about the sinking of the Lusitania.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very much enjoying that. I'm really fascinated by all the research that Larson did and all available resources.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this stuff has been lying around for nearly a century, and Larson, to his great credit, dug it all up and reread it, and then creates a very powerful narrative, bringing people who are long dead alive through their diaries and notebooks and other things, and creating incredible, white knuckle drama over an event uh, about which you already know. You already know how it ends.
Right.
Yet he has you drawn in, and so that's what I'm reading now.
I read that. It's a fabulous book. I read that last summer, actually, on that Bonaventure reunion trip. I borrowed one of the women on the trip is a history teacher, and so I borrowed it. And what's wonderful about that is, like you said, you know about the event, but I found talking to people, like, vaguely that yes, okay, the Lusitania sank, and then we went into World War I, and but there's so many wonderful details that Larson mines out of that, and just the historical detail of it goes beyond just that kind of like trivia answer kind of aspect that I think we know about the Lusitania. For my, one thing I do want to mention, it's not something I've read now. I read it years ago, but your memoir, "Pull Me Up."
Oh yeah.
I read that, and when it came out, I think it was 2003, 2004, and it was the kind of perfect combination, I think, of memoir, of book, and time, because it was just at the time when I was working at the Olean Times Herald, and was just taking a job in Binghamton at the newspaper there. And so it was something about that book, and about your your journey through journalism, and your journey through your career, and me reading that at the time. I was making like the first kind of big leap in my journalism
Mm-hmm.
career, kind of stuck with me on that. So thank you for that book.
No, thank you for remembering it. I appreciate it.
And one thing I always say, and I tell my students this at least once a semester, and it always strikes me, is how there are no quote marks in that book.
Right, because I don't want to. If I'm writing a memoir and I'm recalling a childhood episode, I don't want to suggest that when I was 12 years old, I reached for a pen and paper and jotted it down. It's my memory, and I'm copying to the fact it's my memory, and my memory's flawed. But and as a journalist, you understand that. Quotes or quotations are sacrosanct. You don't mess with them, and so I found that it was more dreamlike to have no quotations, and but also I couldn't make believe that I remembered what my father said to me when I was 12. Um, it probably was something said in anger, but no, I'm kidding. But yeah, so that's why it was. I wanted to be more dreamlike, but more practically. I couldn't claim to know exactly what someone said in 1972.
Mm-hmm. And at the time, like you, I whenever I needed to make a hard decision, I went and played basketball too. So,
That's right. That's it. It clears the mind. Shooting foul shots clears the mind.
Dan Barry, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, Brian, thanks for having me. Go Bonas.